As we go through the papers this morning with Benjamin Butterworth from The Eye and journalist Ella Whelan. Good to see you both this morning. And let's start with the Sun, Benjamin, and Prince Harry and his uniform.
Yes, I was just going to say though, on MPs taking guests, one of you, I won't name, but they're very senior, he told me that when the Queen Mother was lying in state, what he did was he used his 2 guests that he got for that, and he went out into the queue and found 2 very elderly women who were struggling with the queue, and he took them in because he didn't think that they'd be able to stand the whole queue. And so, you know, they can use it in a nice way, like he did for that. And I know that he said he intends that person intends to do it for this one. So, you know, MPs aren't sort of taking advantage of it.
I think the issue with this one is the names have to be put on the application form this time round. And I say
security will be more than
security.
ever.
I say that because I'm actually on the list to go. I'm not going.
Can I come as your friend?
Well, no. So I've been put on the list to go, but I'm not going for various reasons. So I'm not going to be using that ticket.
No.
It didn't seem right for me because I'm just a punter at the end of the day.
Well,
I don't know whether I'd be that gracious. I'd want to go.
I'm queuing for 10 hours after this programme, so yes, I'm in the normal queue. But one person who will be paying their respects tomorrow evening is Prince Harry, and that's the story on the front page of The Sun. So the seven grandchildren will have a private 15 minutes in Westminster Hall tomorrow night, and her children will have the same tonight. And Harry has been allowed to wear his military uniform for that vigil tomorrow. And the palace has said this is not a U-turn, but a one-off, quote-unquote, and that's because there was quite understandably a backlash about him not being able to wear his military uniform.
Why understandably?
Why understandably a backlash? Because Prince Andrew has been allowed to wear his for the vigil that they're having tonight, and it was at one point expected that he would be allowed to wear it for the procession and Harry not, which seemed very unfair. And so they've allowed him to wear it tomorrow, and Andrew will wear his tonight, and I think that's certainly a shift in the palace's attitude.
Well, yes, it should be one rule for both.
Exactly, although
circumstances.
Of course, the reason it's not some kind of hatred of Meghan or something. It's the fact that he chose to step back from being a full-time working royal, as Prince Andrew also had that decision thrust upon him. And so, you know, the reason behind it originally was whether they are working members of the royal family rather than the military service itself.
Yes, because they're not. They lost their honorary titles.
That's right.
So therefore, they technically have no right to.
So it'll be interesting to see what sort of uniform they do wear, won't it?
Well,
they can't wear an honorary title uniform if they've given up that honorary title. So will it be some sort of, I don't know.
They may just have to wear their number ones for whatever rank they were in when they left.
Yeah, I mean, Harry did 10 years and 2 tours of Afghanistan, so he obviously has earned, you know...
Prince Andrew fought in the Falklands.
Yeah, and so, you know, there were some of them where, I think Nicholas Owen mentioned it earlier, where you sort of wonder what all the medals mean. You know, I think Prince Edward did 4 months, and he's got his
quite a few.
His is covered in medals, and you slightly wonder what they're for.
Weird things, medals, aren't they? Because sometimes you get medals for just being there, or not even having been there, having just... Won't everybody get a medal for this? Or at least they would for the coronation.
They'll get a medal for the coronation. I'm not sure whether they get a medal to commemorate the Queen's death. They got a medal for the Platinum Jubilee.
There you are, you see. I suppose that's why your breast fills up with medals, isn't it? Goodness.
Chocolate medals, they call them.
Is that what they say?
The armed forces,
Is that right?
Getting a chocolate medal. Because they know they haven't earned it. So they're not held in the same high regard as a medal which has been earned from a tour of duty.
Let us know what you think of whether Harry and Andrew should wear uniform on the day they're going to, by the sound of it. Ella, take us to the walking behind the Queen's coffin, what Prince William said about that.
Well, from the formality of medals and uniforms and the whole process of following tradition down to a T that happens at a time like this and through a procedure like this, the Mail is reporting on a sort of more informal side of William and Kate, who have been visiting the seas of flowers and commemorations and notes. And he said that walking behind the Queen's coffin brought back memories of his own mother's funeral. And the interesting thing about this, even from my perspective as a Republican, is that there's the way in which the younger royals express their grief is markedly different from previous generations, in that they're much more open. So he's described the Queen as everyone's grandmother. The Mail reports that he was talking to someone at one of these vigils and saying, when one woman told him that she was close to tears, he said, "Oh, don't cry, you'll start me off." And it's kind of, a very, very kind of informal interaction with the public, which is different from the kind of way in which the Queen, or indeed actually even Charles, behaves. And I suppose there's an interesting question there for the way in which the monarchy portrays and presents itself is shifting throughout the generations, and whether that's not necessarily a good or a bad thing, but what it means for scrutiny or openness about the monarchy, because previously the desire to keep it very much formal and separate and distant, which the Queen did quite successfully, meant that there was a sort of mystique about it.
You can almost imagine, though, with this, and it is a sort of a quiet and slow evolution, but you can imagine when the time comes that William becomes king, again, it's got to put a barrier up somewhere. As we're seeing with Charles, he's changed quite significantly overnight.
And actually, but then you kind of have to ask, in an internet age and a leaky internet age, how the thing is, we see so much these days. I mean, obviously with the Queen, her reign heralded in the kind of era of the television, and there have been modernisations throughout the monarchy, but you see those clips of Charles losing his temper at pens and aids and things like that, and that would never have happened previously.
Can I just say,
kind of behind the scenes.
What did we make of that clip? Because I mean, apart from the fact I've got absolute sympathy for Charles, in that, and clearly his temper is frayed, and he did lose patience with a pen. I mean, I don't think he said anything terrible.
I didn't see it. What did he actually do?
It was a fountain pen that wasn't working.
It was leaked on his fingers. And
I think that there's
the way it was shot, and the fact that they were being extremely candid, both him and the Queen, gave me the impression they didn't realise they were being filmed.
Well, that's what I mean in a leaky internet age, in that and actually the clip circulated very widely in America, which is there are some members of the American press who are having a bit of a field day about this kind of thing. But there's those kind of behind the scenes shots of the royals are, I think, more likely to happen now that we have
more and more.
But it's also that we have a kind of, the royals, I think, are transitioning, perhaps unwillingly, into a kind of more of a celebrity role, particularly the younger ones, in which there is that desire to kind of peek into the kitchen, and a sort of, I think, a lessening of the reverence, which, for a Republican like me, might provide some kind of interesting political questions. But I have to say, on the Charles Penn thing, there has just been this very interesting discussion among the media, which is, only a few months ago there was huge discussion about how awful the toxic environment in Number 10 was, and politicians shouting at staff, and how this was absolutely inaccessible, and it went on for days and days and days and days. And on one radio station that I won't mention, yesterday morning, they were kind of chuckling about how, the staff has to put up with the Windsor temper. And so it's just funny how these things get talked about in different situations.
But I don't think Charles did anything wrong in that clip. I'll show you it.
No, but it's interesting. I was watching when Prince William and Kate were doing the crowds, and William was talking very animatedly to a mum with a baby. But the way it's normally filmed is that you stand back a bit, and the microphones are back a bit, so you don't always hear what is always considered to be a little bit of a private conversation between the Prince and whoever in the crowd he wants to talk to. But there was somebody behind, I think it was another member of the family, behind, filmed the whole thing on their iPhone, or their phone, and then gave it to the media. So you heard the whole conversation, which was charming and lovely, but you think that's no longer the private moment that Prince William might have thought he got.
Actually, one of the remarkable things about watching the people filing in to pay their respects to the Queen is that I think it probably is one of the very few experiences spaces in modern life where people are literally just in the moment. I mean, there's not phones and that aren't allowed, and I think people would have more sense to not be coming in taking selfies and taking pictures. But there is, from live gigs to football matches to even the processions outside, you think everybody has their phone out and filming things. But in that hall, there is just silence, and there's just people sort of living in the moment of history, which is quite something.
And it's that young, we just saw there, and if you're watching on the radio, you're going to have to have a look online at this, I think, on our app. But there was a young lady there, and I don't know what regiment or anything she'd be in, but she certainly had her military cap on.
She did.
And just walking away, you could, even from this angle, you could see she was very...
moved.
Well, she looked like she was on the verge of tears,
she was
frankly.
upset, yeah.
And I think we mustn't underestimate what she means to so many people. And it's not just even those people who are, some people are royalists and some people are Republicans, and I guess the most of us are sort of somewhere in the middle in a way. But it's the fact she has just been there throughout our entire lives. There's this steady force.
Well, you can't imagine Britain without her.
No.
I think that's it for most of us. So it is a bit earth-changing for us, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And she is our grandmother, as has been talked about in the Express, Benjamin.
Yeah, you've kind of just picked up on it with the Mail, but this was William outside talking to members of the public, and he said that he realises that she's the nation's grandmother, not just his. I suspect he appreciated that long before this week, but it's been so obvious, and he talked about how he was shaken by the events of last week and of the last week, and that walking behind the Queen's coffin brought back memories of the same walk with his mother, Princess Diana.
Yes.
And you can imagine, that must be pretty traumatising. And, when I was watching that procession, it was kind of, and I don't necessarily mean this in a negative way, but the brutality of the process.
It is brutal.
I mean, these are human beings just like us, and yet there is the history, the tradition of these processes that they have to endure. And I think, you have to give them full credit to the commitment to duty and to those traditions, because I suspect none of them, were they given the choice, would really want to do it in that way. But I do think, and it picks up on what Ella was saying, I was by the gates of Buckingham Palace for when the coffin came back in for the final time, and it was one of those moments where I took my earphones out and I put my phone away, because I think so many people, and apparently the Queen remarked on this when she was alive, that she used to look at people's faces and now she looks at people's phones and cameras.
That's a shame, isn't it?
And I put my phone away, and because I felt it was a moment to feel rather than to film when that coffin was coming in, and just took in the moment.
Yes, I agree entirely.
I think that's what people need to do at this
I'm
time.
glad they've obviously made that very clear to anyone going into Westminster Hall, is that this is not a time for phones and selfies, even though I think you would probably be almost motivated to do that if you were allowed. This is a time for just the moment, living in the moment, and living in the moment of history, as you said, Ellen, which is extraordinary.
It is indeed. Look, we're going to leave you two for the time being, but I know you're going to be back a little bit later on, so we look forward to that. Benjamin and Ella, thank you very much indeed.